Welcome to the Miracle You, guiding you on the journey towards finding passion and purpose and how to discover, create, and live a life by your design. Whether your success has been plentiful or your missed opportunities have been overwhelming, we can help you become a more empowered, masterful person and show you how to share your gift with the world. It's time to inspire change from within with the host of the Miracle You, Vince Kramer.
Hello, imagination. I'm Vince Kramer, your host, and welcome to the Miracle You, where you learn about the magic of living your life by finding the example in real life.
We're living in interesting times. The world is experiencing a lot of growth and expansion as each and every one of us learn more about our gifts and talents. Our technology has increased so fast over the last couple decades that it's amazing. A phone that holds a computer that in one time would take up a whole floor of a building is right at our fingertips, literally. We have so much available in being able to know what's happening in our friends' lives, know what's happening around the world because of our social media and being able to tap into that. Our friends are just a click away as we send emails and learn what's happening in their lives as we read theirs. The technology has given us opportunities to do and be so much more than we've had in the past. But unfortunately, the technology can also hold us back if we spend more time on social media than we do interacting in our communities. Or if we are constantly reading our emails or getting our gratification or getting our worth out of reading an email because we're needed or somebody is just wants to share about what's going on in their life, but we don't have the interaction with them, it can hold us back. There's a happy medium. Where can we find a way to be the community animals that we're meant to be? How can we interact with people so we can feel their energy? We can get to know who they are. It's a whole different ball game when you're in the same room with someone and can feel the energy that they're giving you at the time, their higher vibration or even their lower vibrations. We make up the emotions that people are feeling when we read their text. We make up the emotions that the people are feeling when we read their emails. And many times that causes more separation, even though we think we're more connected with the people in our lives. I'm with Rob Krecak today. Rob is a thrill seeker, self-professed nerd, question asker, voracious reader, competitor, keynote speaker, and business builder. He founded Humans First to help people use technology to make their lives easier, not harder. Along with his time in the corporate world, Rob has successfully owned and operated multiple businesses and is passionate about giving back to the community. He's been a board member, volunteer, or acting mentor for many organizations in the Milwaukee area. Rob, are you ready to share the miracle of you with the imagination?
Absolutely, Vince. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to delve into what Humans First is sharing for everyone, because I think we all are working way too hard and taking time away from living our purpose in other ways than just going to work. So I can't wait to learn more. But can you share about yourself and a little bit about what you're doing right now so we can delve in deeper?
Yeah, well, I'll share actually a quick story about my past, which is very related to Humans First, and kind of is part of the reason why I'm helping people with technology mindfulness, is what I call it. So when I was in high school, it was a very, very difficult time for me because I had extremely bad acne. It was very, very crippling, and I, had a period of time where I had low self-esteem and self-worth, and it was really difficult because I just felt really bad about how I looked, and I, didn't want people to look at me because of my acne. And so, one of the unfortunate side effects of having that acne was that I became addicted to video games. But this was in the mid 90s, right before most people even had a cell phone or had an internet connected computer. And so I became addicted to video games when I was in, high school. And so I saw some of the negative effects of technology well before most people were even using technology. And then at other points in my life, I was also addicted to Facebook and addicted to my email. And so like, this is a very personal topic for me when I, say that I want to help people with this, is because I have seen the negative impact of technology use on my own life. And I want to help other people not go through what I did.
Oh, I can understand, and I think all of us experience times in our lives where it just feels like we're unacceptable or we don't want to be part of society. And I think a lot of addiction comes from that place. It's a relief valve. It's a way to hide, but it also a way to feel better. So thank you for being so open and sharing that. So let me ask you this, Rob, as you went through your first part of your adult life, you went out into the corporate world, very successful in the corporate world, very successful in the entrepreneurial world, and then you realized through something that happened in your life that you wanted to do more, you wanted to give back even more. And I think from the research I've done, that's where Humans First came from. What was that wake up call? What was it that got you to say, I'm here for much, much more, and I've got to do it?
Yeah, so it was a very clear day that I remember. I owned some You Break I Fix cell phone repair stores in Milwaukee, and I was at one of my stores one day. It was a very busy store, and I was checking people in like I'd done thousands of times. So this middle-aged woman comes in with her son, and she shuffles in the store, and she's physically shoving her son up to the front of the store. And she said to her son, "Hey, Tyler, you need to tell this man what you did to your phone." And I looked at the kid and I felt terrible because he couldn't stammer out a sentence. He couldn't look me in the eye. He could barely tell me what happened to his phone. And I felt bad for him. I thought, well, maybe he has a developmental disability or something. I'm not quite sure. But I did my very best to help him. We fixed his phone and everything went fine with the transaction. But then I started paying attention and I noticed that and a couple weeks later, a very similar situation happened with a different woman and her daughter. And they came in and it was the same thing where the daughter could barely communicate with me. And then I had this aha moment. I thought to myself, oh, these kids are coming in here and they're probably very heavy users of technology. They're coming in to get their technology fixed right away because they can't live without it, right? And so maybe it's because of how and how much they're using technology that this is why, like, that is the cause of their poor social skills. And so I read this book called iGen by Gene Twenge about how technology is impacting, almost every aspect of a generation of kids. And that just kind of launched me into this technology mindfulness topic. And, over the last 4 years, I've read over 100 books and dissected over 2,000 articles and studies to truly understand what's happening in humanity.
So what is happening to humanity, Rob?
Well, if I could, summarize this 4 years of work in a couple of sentences, it would be this. I believe that at the same time, technology is simultaneously increasing the day-to-day and sometimes minute-to-minute stress that we experience, while at the same time degrading our relationships, families, and communities, and lowering our perceived social support. So you have increasing stress, worse ability to deal with that stress because social support is one of the main ways that we buffer against stress or we can tolerate stress. And so you have these two things that are, moving in the wrong direction. And I think that this is not necessarily the entire reason, but a huge contributor to the mental health, crisis that we have in the United States and really around the world today.
And we definitely have a mental health issue with the experiences of addiction in so many different ways. And like you said, the inability to really interact socially, which we are community animals. If we like it or not, we truly are community animals. And to not just to prosper or not just to grow and expand, but also to survive. We're community animals, so it's very important. So I appreciate that the work that you're doing. Can we talk first, because I want to delve into where you feel we should go and how we can get there. But before we do that, can you talk to the positive sides of technology?
Yeah, yeah, of course. And so just to be super clear for you and the listeners, Vince, I always say I describe my stance like this. I'm not anti-technology, I'm pro-humanity. You even read in the beginning, I'm a nerd. Like I built my first computer in middle school, right? So like I love technology. I think it does amazing things for humanity. But here's kind of what is helpful in terms of thinking about technology, or at least for me, right? I think of technology as a tool. And just like any tool can be used for positive intent or negative intent, it really depends on how you decide to use it. As an example, I could take a hammer and build a house that helps me survive the elements and keeps me alive. Or I could take a hammer and hit people on the head with it. It really just depends on the hammer in and of itself isn't bad. It's how I use the hammer that's bad. And so the whole point of my company, Humans First, is to educate people and show them that there are some ways that they might be using technology that doesn't serve them well, and that could be harming them, and then they can decide what they want to do. I'm not here to tell people what to do. I'm here to provide you with resources and information and education, and then you can decide. So, I think that technology does incredible things. I mean, it can make us way more productive. It helps us connect with people both online and offline. It helps us, scale things that weren't scalable before. I mean, it does an incredible amount of things. There's no question.
It truly gives us more time, but then if we abuse it, it takes time away from us, and the time that it takes away from us is really had an effect. And I don't think it's just had an effect on kids, although like you said, there's a whole generation that doesn't know anything any different. But it affects all of us. I think I know I read an article just recently that Elon Musk, his big desire is to get up in the morning and not look at his phone.
Oh, I have not heard that. That's super interesting.
So it's even probably one of the highest tech people that we have right now, at least influentially, is talking about, I want to get up in the morning and not look at my phone the first thing because it's taking away from my life. So as we move into it, Rob, could you share where you see technology is really negatively affecting, let's just say, parents and then their children? Could you share a little bit about your understanding and research around that?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for an hour just about that one question, but here's what I'm seeing happening is, so let's pretend you're like the average parent who is working, right? Almost every family now that has kids is both parents work because you can't afford to not have both parents work. So you're probably a working parent. And what happens is if you are using technology in a way that doesn't serve you well at your job, you are becoming stressed out. And let me explain, if you don't mind, I can explain the psychology and the physiology of what's happening. And I think that this will be really helpful for listeners. So what happens is not anytime, but almost anytime we interact with technology, like let's say, for instance, when we check our email or a notification on our phone, what happens is it activates our sympathetic nervous system. This is the fight or flight system that helps us be aware of threats and get out of dangerous situations. So we check our email, our fight or flight system is activated. Well, in America, the average person is checking their email once every 6 minutes. So think about it. You're activating the sympathetic nervous system, this fight or flight system, every 6 minutes. And what's happening is your nervous system is then getting activated and amped up all throughout the day. The huge problem with that is that it takes a full 30 minutes or more for this fight or flight system to downregulate and recover. And so if we're constantly checking our email, we're constantly getting notifications on our phone, the entire day, our fight or flight system is being activated. And what that's doing is putting us in a negative emotional state. And so not only is that increasing your stress, it's actually decreasing your ability to do your job. You're less productive. But the other thing is, from a family standpoint, you're probably not the best parent that you could be if you're in a negative, highly emotionally, highly aroused state from your job all day. And so you can't be the best husband or father or or mother or wife to your spouse or your kids, because your job is putting you in this negative emotional state from how you use technology. And so, I think that has a ton of implications for your entire family and you personally. Like, it really is affecting everything in your life because you're in this negative emotional state from technology.
Yeah, the interesting thing through all of that is that, as you said, we're not like a dog or a goose where we can just shake it all off and go on, and it affects our health and everything else because the blood's leaving the organs. They're out in that place where we can run fast or swing hard, and it's affecting our bodies. It's not just affecting our mind. It's just not affecting our families. It's really a holistic problem across the board. For those that are listening that don't know the difference of the different parts of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, when we're triggered and we're in that fight or flight mode, it's like sitting in your car trying to stop your car and to get into a place where you can rest and relax at the same time of having the gas pedal pushed all the way to the floor. So your body can't recover, and it's constantly pulling away from giving you restful time, giving you the ability to restore your body, which is huge. And let me ask you this, Rob, because I've seen it. Actually, I was talking to, it's been a couple months ago now, but I was talking to a 14-year-old who was worried about how he is going to support his family. His
14-year-old.
Yeah, a 14-year-old. So he is already in that sympathetic nervous system. He's already in a place where he's got adrenaline pumping in his body all the time, which means it's going to destroy his body. Is that something that we're seeing across the board? The anxiety, the depression that the kids are experiencing, and how can we move beyond that?
Yeah. So Vince, I can tell that like we're on the same wavelength with all this stuff and that you already get it. Like, that's really cool. So yes, absolutely. What is happening is this sympathetic or fight or flight system activation is, I believe, greatly contributing to, and is, in my opinion, the main cause of a lot of the anxiety that we have today. And that anxiety eventually leads to depression. When that anxiety circuit in your brain is overworked or overused, it can lead to depression later. There's lots of data that shows that. And so, but let me actually back up and tell you about a different example from something related, but not exactly the same. And it will help you understand how incredibly impactful this interconnectivity is, where we're always on and we're always looking at everything. So in my research for Humans First, I also researched eating disorders. And that might sound weird, like, why would I do that? Well, if you look at when eating disorders became most prevalent in the United States, it was in the 1960s. And what happened during that time? Well, that was the first time in history where most Americans had a TV in their home. And how would you'd say, how, Rob, does that contribute to eating disorders? And here's what would happen. So let's pretend you're in a town of 500 people and you're a female. Well, before TV, you're basically you're comparing yourself to the other 250 females in that town. And let's say there's probably, I don't know, 25 of them that are your age. So really, you're, as a female, you're, comparing your, like, how beautiful you are, how successful you are, whatever, to these 25 different peers in your town. And, you probably have some things that they don't, and you can feel reasonably good and confident about yourself. And that seems very reasonable. Well, what the problem is when TV comes onto the scene, and now you can compare yourself not to just the 25 females who are your peers in your town, but you compare yourself to the very, very successful, very good looking actors and actresses and people on TV. Now, all of a sudden, you feel worse. You feel worse about yourself because you're not just comparing yourself to the small group of people. And so that proliferated. So the TV in homes proliferated this incredible increase of eating disorders, especially in women. And I think that social media is actually doing that, but like times 100 today. It's like times 100. It's incredibly more damaging to the female, especially to females, because of a lot of different reasons. But so I for social media specifically, I think unfortunately one of the only ways to avoid that is just to simply not use it as much or not at all. And I think when I coach a lot of people on that, you'd be surprised. Like I've had entire hour-long conversations with one person about deleting social media, and they wouldn't do it. Like they just wouldn't do it. They wouldn't delete it from their phone. It's like we're cutting their arm off, And so I do think that what people realize when they do delete it, and let's say you just use it from your computer or laptop instead of your phone, you can still use it, just not delete, just delete it off your phone and use it more mindfully from your computer. What a lot of people find is that after a week, they're like, oh, I don't really know what I was missing. It's not a big deal, but it does take about a week's time for them to adjust.
We crave that connection, and we've learned to get that connection without having connection, which is what you shared earlier. So it's pretty scary. You just made a quick little statement there of just talking about social media. It's what you just said. Tell us about how other technologies are affecting us and causing this stress.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think another huge one is email, right? So there's all this data that shows that when you check your email, it negatively impacts your job performance and it stresses you out. And if you don't mind, I can kind of describe like psychologically what's happening, and then probably like people will kind of have like the light bulb moment. So
Yeah, yes, I would prefer you did, because of the next question I was going to ask you is how it triggers our fight or flight, how it puts us in the sympathetic nervous system. So this would be great.
that's exactly what I'm going to answer for you. Yeah, Vince, you bet. So here's what happens. So let's just pretend again, like I like to, have these hypotheticals. Let's pretend it's Monday morning. You go into your job and you look in your inbox and you have 400 unread emails, right? This is probably not that unreasonable actually, or unusual for a lot of people. They walk in Monday morning and have these ridiculous amount of emails. Well, here's what happened. And let's pretend it's 8 a.m. and you have your first meeting at 9 a.m., right? So you have like an hour, right? Well, you say to yourself, okay, I walk into these 400 unread emails and you're like, oh my God. Like, and all this, by the way, this is happening like subconsciously. You're not actually like actively thinking this, but here's what happens. You look at the 400 unread emails, your brain thinks, oh my God, there's so many things to do here. How on earth am I going to get through these 400 emails in the next hour? Because I have my first meeting coming up then. So I only have an hour. This is really overwhelming. We get overwhelmed. And then when humans are overwhelmed, we interpret that as a loss of control. Well, the number one thing that all humans need as a basic human need is autonomy or control. So we see these emails, again, our brain subconsciously interprets it as overwhelming. Overwhelm is a sense of loss of control. And then our brain interprets that as a threat. And then we go into fight or flight. And so you don't, in this, like all happens and you don't even think that it doesn't even register that it's happening, right? For most people, most of the time. So you're in this fight or flight, and then you're just thinking to myself, like, oh my gosh, like I need to get through these, right? And it's very stressful. And so every time you check your email and you're not at inbox zero or you have unread emails, it's a reminder of all these overwhelming amount of things that you need to do and things you need to talk to people about and blah, blah, blah. Like the list goes on and on, right? And so it sounds, I've almost like one way that I've decided to deal with this, and obviously this is not probably, some people think that I'm totally crazy when I say this, but I've actually deleted email completely from my phone, like completely. Like I have no email apps whatsoever. I can't check my email from my phone, and I only check it from my desktop computer a couple times a day, maybe 2 or maybe 3 times a day at most, but usually just once. And when I dedicate that time to checking my email and being in there, it's kind of like ignorance is bliss, right? Like if I'm not in my inbox the other 23 hours a day, I actually really love it. Like I enjoy it. And it's so much less stressful for me. I really feel like it made a huge difference in my life to do that.
It's a tough thing for people to do. What kind of things do you share at Humans First on how people can let go of their email, or at least control how often they get to that place where they feel that they've got to read it, or they've got to tap into it, or social media.
Yeah, well, maybe I could just explain a little bit psychologically why email is, we love it, like why it's so addicting, right? Because I think other than social media, I think email is the most addicting technology. And here's why. So the first one is it uses intermittent variable rewards. This is the same way that slot machines function. So when on a slot machine, when you pull the handle, you're not sure how long it's going to spin and you don't know what comes up, right? It's an intermittent variable reward. And that's very addicting, right? Like that's how gambling works basically. And so when we check our email, we don't know how many emails we'll have. We don't know who they're from. We don't know what they say. It's exactly the same principle as checking a slot machine. So that's very addictive. But then there's a couple other things that really play into why email is more addictive than gambling. There's this social reciprocity. So humans are hardwired to want to help or correspond with other people. And so Vince, even if, let's say, for instance, I emailed you and you hated my guts, you would still feel obligated to email me back just because it's hardwired into you as a human. The last thing, though, which I think is the most important, is that because email is coming from other people, right? And we as human beings have a very innate need to feel innate need to feel wanted and needed and loved. And so when we get email from other people, we feel wanted and we feel important and we feel needed. And so like you have these three things greatly contributing to email addiction, or why it's so hard to let go of your email. And they're all very hardwired things into humans. Like it's hard to shut these off. But the reason that I explain all this psychology is once you understand that and hey, I know that this email makes me feel needed and important, but really I'm not my email. And it doesn't matter if I check my email 50 times a day or 5, I'm still going to be the same person. And I'm not going to be any different. That is kind of a good place to start and to change your mindset around checking your email a little bit.
That's a tough sell for many people. So could you give us some ideas on how people can start that progression into freeing up themselves, giving them an opportunity to go into the parasympathetic, to enjoy life instead of getting the satisfaction out of social media or emails?
Yeah, well, I think my my wife always says that I'm like I'll just like when I get an idea, I'm just gonna do it. And I just take it for granted that other people aren't that way. So like when I decided I didn't want social media on my phone, I just deleted it and never install it again, and that was years ago. But I get that most people aren't like me. So what I would say to the average person is if you're worried about, let's say, missing something or not being as attentive on your email, what I would say is do things in steps. So for instance, let's say now you check your email like the average person once every 6 minutes. Why don't you just try to check it once every 20 minutes? And then maybe check it once every 20 minutes on the day one. Then maybe the next day you check it once every 30 minutes. Then the next day, maybe once an hour. Then maybe the next day, once every 2 hours, right? And what you'll find, and again, this is difficult, but what you'll find is that, you can I've went sometimes days where I don't check my email at all, even just during a regular work week, and nothing bad happens. I mean, I'm not saying nothing small never happened, but like the amount of productivity or time back that I get, or like clarity of thought that I get by not checking my email for 2 days greatly outweighed the small negative things that probably happened.
So can we basically wean ourselves off of all of these technology things that are really zapping our time?
Well, I think each person needs to determine what's right for them. I mean, for instance, I have my text messages set it's called a scheduled summary, so that I only get 4 text message notifications per day. And I like it that way. But if I had kids, I might not be able to do that as easily. However, what I would instruct my kids is, hey, if there's a real emergency, you don't text me, you call me, like a phone call, like a regular call that we used to do all the time, And that's what I would tell our kids, is to do that, because a lot of people, it just escapes them. Like the phone can be still used as a phone, and that is a way to communicate. I know that sounds super basic, but I feel like I've talked to countless people who say like for instance, I had a client who she said, yeah, I'm always looking at my text messages at work because my daycare provider always texts me important things. And I said, well, why couldn't you just have a conversation with your daycare provider and tell them to call you if something is really important? She's like, okay. And she did it. And it was like, now she didn't have to look at her phone at all unless it was a phone call, you know? It totally changed her relationship with her phone during the day.
And I can see the power in that, and I can see the freedom in it. And when we are consciously making a choice when it's time to check emails or when it's time to look at our text messages, it is freeing, and it's got to be extremely freeing. I'm one of the lucky podcasters that I know my mother listens to every single episode. So I have to ask a question that I'm sure that she's interested in. What about video games and young children? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So again, I was addicted to video games. So like I get that. I really get that. And even as an adult, right? A couple years ago, like during COVID, I installed a video game because I was really bored, to be totally honest. Like I'm a super extroverted person. My wife and I didn't have crap to do. So we're like, I'm just gonna install this video game. I got so sucked in so fast. It was crazy, right? And I was even aware of all this stuff, you know? And so I do think, and it's interesting that if you interview or I've heard that a lot of professional video gamers, professional people who play video games for a living, that's their living, they are depressed. And it's not surprising to me that they're depressed because what I think happens is video games, and it depends on the type of video game and how much you play and a bunch of other factors, obviously. But I think many video games do activate your fight or flight system. And over a long period of time, that is not sustainable. That is not good for you. And, again, like you have to decide what's important in your life. Is it really important to play video games, or is it important to like connect with people and do other things and like, have other meaningful conversations? You have to decide. But I really think that if you play a lot of video games and you're saying to yourself, I feel lonely or maybe even anxious or possibly depressed, I really believe that the video games could be significantly contributing to that. And I think the solution is to maybe not delete video games, but like play them a little bit less and then connect with more people in person.
And for the parents that are listening, for the caregivers that are listening, we might have to make that choice for the children, or at least find something to keep them busy or active, or let's say relating with other children or other people to help them along that journey so they don't move into a place like Rob shared with us earlier, where he was addicted to his video world. Rob, believe it or not, we're at the end of our time together, and I want to make sure that you share something that each and every person that listens to the podcast to take away from it.
Yeah. Well, this is such a meaningful thought for my wife and I that we share this with people at our wedding. And it's this: the amount of love, success, and happiness in this world are infinite. And so imagine how much love, success, and happiness we could all have together if we all decided to put humans first.
Awesome. I don't even want to go beyond that. That was so powerful and so important for everyone to hear. Well, someone who checks their email very sparingly, not a big social media presence, how in the world can people get in touch with you and learn more about Humans First?
Yeah. Well, I do have a website. People can check me out on www.humansfirst.us. And then one other thing that I wanted to offer to your listeners, Vince, is a free 30-minute technology mindfulness consultation call with me via Zoom. So all people need to do to redeem that is just email me. My email address is rob at humansfirst.us. Just mention this podcast in the subject line, and I'm happy to set up a free 30-minute call to help you with your technology mindfulness and hopefully get you some time back and help you be less stressed and connect with the people in your life.
How generous. Thank you so much. I'll make sure all that information, especially the free sessions, available to you on Rob's show page. Just go to themiracleu.com, look for Rob's show page. That information will be there for you. Rob, thank you so much for sharing with us today, taking the time to out of a day that I'm sure has been spectacular and I hope continues to be spectacular, to share your desire, to share what you know your calling is in the world, because each and every one of us are special, and we take the time to find where we're special and then to bring that to world. We make a tremendous difference. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vince. I'm really grateful for the opportunity.
On behalf of my wife and business partner, Mary, the entire team here at Imagine Miracles, we want to wish each and every one of you a miracle day.
You've completed this episode of The Miracle You, but we have plenty more to help you discover your own personal passion and purpose. Head over to themiracleyou.com for free resources to assist you on your journey, as well as register for our free webinar, Discover Your Miracle Life, 3 mind-awakening steps toward your unique purpose, or apply for a one-on-one Your Life, Your Way breakthrough session and discover your next best step on your journey. All available exclusively on our website. That's themiracleyou.com. We look forward to sharing more experiences of passion, purpose, and life by design next time, right here on The Miracle You.